well, senior citizens, more and more of them across central Connecticut are finding themselves having to deal with homelessness for the first time.
Yeah, it's a growing problem, and unfortunately, there is no simple fix. Fox 61's Keith McGilvery is live in New Britain with a closer look at this issue. Keith.
Erica and Tim, good morning. When I first met Joe Nadeau, he reminded me a lot of my own grandfather. He's a likable guy, soft-spoken, easy to talk to. But like a growing number of people his age right here in our region, he's spending his nights in the shelter behind me. The idea of living on the street is a scary one for Joe Nadeau.
Well, freezing to death in the winter and how people survive.
The 81-year-old is homeless for the first time. He's one of almost 6,000 homeless individuals in the state. In May, Joe moved into this 37-bed shelter at the Friendship Service Center in New Britain.
It's a special place. It's a bed to sleep on and food to eat and to make me happy.
Widowed with health problems and saddled with debt, he had nowhere else to go. Charlotte Dupree Cologne is the client care operations manager.
So Joe first came to us for mental health. So he struggled with his mental health and then was referred to us from New Britain General. And because of that, he lost his housing.
Dupree Cologne says Joe's story is becoming more common across central Connecticut.
I think it's difficult because he's experiencing homelessness for the first time in his lifetime. There's not a lot of resources out there for elderly.
The center's CEO says Connecticut's numbers match an upward trend across the country.
It's really sad when you think about people that should be aging in place with dignity that are faced with being out in the streets, in the elements, or in an emergency shelter. It's not how we think of our parents and our grandparents having to live, but we've seen an increase in seniors nationally, and here in the state of Connecticut, about 25% of our state's population that is experiencing homelessness are also seniors.
And while some have beds with family, friends, or shelters, it's worse for others. Recent numbers show 17 of the region's 71 known unsheltered individuals, folks who don't have a traditional roof over their head, are seniors. Friendship's leaders say there are no simple solutions, that seniors living off SSI and minimum wage jobs can't afford rising rents, and that a lack of affordable senior housing doesn't help. They say the legislature needs to take action while they do what they can to help folks like Joe.
I treat people like how I would want to be treated, and I treat especially the older folks how I would want someone to treat my family, with the respect and dignity that they deserve.
It's kindness Joe doesn't take for granted.
She helped me a lot. I'm afraid to leave the place.
You can just hear the pain in Mr. Nadeau's voice there. An additional glimpse into the reality in which he's living right now. When I asked him to tell me a little bit about his wife, Tim and Erica, and if he had a picture of her, the only photo he has left is the picture on her license. It is a grim reality for so many seniors across our region. Do want to let you know we are going to talk more about this problem and perhaps more importantly, solutions when the executive director of the Friendship Service Center joins Symphony and I in the studio on the Fox 61 Morning News at 9 a.m. But for now, live in New Britain this morning, I'm Keith McGilvery, Fox 61.
All right, Keith, thanks. Yeah.
There are thousands of individuals experiencing homelessness all across Connecticut, and many of them folks are seniors. This morning, we're taking a closer look at the problem and possible solutions. I'm joined in studio by Caitlin Rose, the CEO of the Friendship Service Center in New Britain. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Keith.
You and I have known each other for 3 years now. We just shared our story with audiences about an 81-year-old Joe Nadeau, who is one of many seniors experiencing homelessness in Connecticut. When you see his story and you're on the front lines of tackling this problem, what goes through your mind?
I mean, I think it's incredible to see that somebody who has lived their lives stably housed for so long could experience something like this. I think that when the general public sometimes thinks about homelessness, they think about kind of the chronic homeless population, people that have been on the streets a long time. They maybe have mental health crises. They maybe are using drugs. What we're seeing in our shelters and our drop-in centers are just regular people that are are going through an economic crisis. So it's really heartbreaking to also see the emotionality he had about the experience also.
We are committed as a station to talk about all issues associated with housing, the complexities of it, the cost of it. You are keenly seeing that when it comes to senior housing and the availability on that front. What does that picture look like?
Well, with people on fixed income, I mean, they really have limited resources. If you're living on SSI, SSDI, if you're living on a pension, you have really a set amount that you can set aside for your housing. If you do not already have a home that you've paid off, you are at the mercy of potentially a landlord or an assisted living facility that can charge whatever they need to charge to be able to cover their expenses. And there's a big mismatch between what the resources somebody has on fixed income and what the rental market really looks like.
The legislature is meeting as we speak. It is a budget year. A budget will have to be crafted. We see everybody, all these nonprofits jockeying for a piece of the pie. What is your message to the legislature? Is the governor doing enough?
We really appreciate this year that some homeless service items are in the governor's budget, so we're really thankful for that. We would like to see those line items increase just to make sure we have the capacity for what we need. But what we're really eager about is sustainable solutions that are going to stem inflow into homelessness. As a nation and as a state, we have to decide if this is something that we want to continue to respond to, or if we want to take it seriously and look at the citizens of our state and think that they deserve to have a place to live. We don't need to commodify housing the way that we have, and there's some really interesting legislative ideas that are being proposed right now that I'm really curious to see how they're going to pan out.
In the piece that we've been sharing throughout the morning from your service center, we talked about $1 million in renovations that you hope to pull off with federal funding. We've had a shift in administration. When we first talked, we didn't know where that would stand. Are you concerned? Do you think that money will come through from the federal government?
I'm concerned for a few reasons. I mean, we also were awarded an appropriation for some new funding for rapid rehousing this fall. We have no indication if anything that's been appropriated by Congress is actually going to come out. If we don't receive that $1 million, we don't know that the state will be able to kick in to be able to completely fund the renovation. And we also know that we've been awarded something to serve domestic violence survivors in rapid rehousing. We don't know that we'll have those dollars either. So there's a lot hanging in the balance for new projects as well as our existing projects that are federally funded.
I take the opportunity to sit on this couch seriously. It is important to me. I like to leave people feeling empowered after they watch a segment like this. To somebody who's watching at home who wants to help move the needle, what can they do?
Our elected representatives want to hear from us. They need to know what we want to see from them. So I would really encourage you to reach out to your state and U.S. representatives on the statewide level. Encourage them to take seriously some of the options that are coming through the Housing Committee, the Appropriations Committee, Planning and Development. And on the federal level, encourage your representatives. I mean, Chris Murphy's been a champion for us, but keep encouraging them to speak out to make sure that funds that have been appropriated by Congress actually come to our state to serve our constituents.
It is such important information. We are grateful you're here. And I should say briefly, we recently went out with one of your community outreach teams into the woods of central Connecticut, simply to meet folks where they are to try to craft solutions and highlight the problem. That story is coming up soon right here on the Fox 61 Morning News. Back to you.